Alien influence and rulers of ancient Egypt. Hieroglyphs from Abydos temple and the Tulli Papyrus suggest exactly that. Due to annual floods and high alluvial soil, the valley of the Nile was the cradle of one of the oldest civilizations in the world. The two Egyptian kingdoms, the Upper Kingdom in the south and the Lower Kingdom in the north, were rivals. They were united by Menes Narmer around 3050 BC. That's over 5,000 years ago. Egypt, a gift of the Nile. The Abydos town, which has the temple of Seti, was one of the most sacred places in ancient Egypt. It's located about 483 kilometers south of Cairo and 15 kilometers from the Nile. And they say that Osiris was buried here. In Egyptian mythology, Osiris is the god of the later life, the world beyond, and the dead. Osiris was a legendary king of Egypt, and he was famous for the vigor and justice with which he governed the people and the country. In 1948, an archaeologist uncovered something very strange. In an archaeological expedition, they discovered a queer queue of hieroglyphs in Abydos. The hieroglyphs were carefully copied and brought to Europe, where heated debates were created because of the mysterious images that they had. Nobody could certainly explain the drawings, and they were considered to be bizarre objects. The technology development, however, allowed tourists to enter the temple, and the first images appeared in the 1990s. The internet has distributed these images all over the world, and today we can see photos of the ancient, quote-unquote, famous helicopters. Now, we've all seen this at one point or another. You see the helicopter on the top row. In the middle, towards the right, you see something that's sort of like a UFO. And on the bottom, below that, is something like a jet. So these things are, of course, around in the 20th century. But how were these hieroglyphs made 3,000 years BC? Now, in one of my previous videos concerning Alexander the Great, I read that the last legitimate pharaoh of Egypt was Nectanebo. Nectanebo was considered the true biological father of Alexander the Great. It says that he fled to Thessalonica, northern Greece, from Egypt because of the fact that people wanted to assassinate him. And he fled there under the disguise of being a magician, a clairvoyant, a sorcerer, a seer. And he was at the palace of Philip of Macedon, the father of Alexander the Great. He was there with the queen Olympias, who was Alexander the Great's mother. This was way before Alexander was born or conceived. Philip was away at war campaigns, and he was away from a long time. Now, Nectanebo was there under the guise of an advisor, a spiritual man, a seer, a wizard, and as we know, the biological mother of Alexander the Great, Olympias, was a Clodone. She was a Clodon. She was one of the women belonging to the cult of Dionysius. And that they were also involved in black magic and paranormal. Now, it's said that Nectanebo, under the guise of a magician, would give something to Olympias, and she would be very drowsy and out of it at night. And he would come and visit her at night in her room, in her bedroom, and telling her that she would give birth to a god, because her son would be fathered by a god. Now, this, of course, was not really a lie. Nectanebo was considered a god in Egypt because he was the pharaoh of Egypt, one of the last of the true pharaonic line. So she did conceive while Philip was away warring during his battles. And when Philip came back and found that Olympias had a very growing belly, she said that obviously he confronted her saying, how could you be pregnant how could my wife be pregnant when I'm away? That's not possible. She says, well, I am pregnant, but I got pregnant by a god, and I have conceived a god. And she kept on saying that to Alexander the Great. When Alexander the Great, of course, there are Old Testament prophecies concerning Alexander the Great. In the Old Testament, the prophet Saint Daniel and the Archangel Gabriel gave prophecies concerning Alexander the Great, the little horn, who would smash the big horn of Persia and the Medes, the Persians, and he did. Now, before he went on his campaign to conquer Persia in the east, Alexander the Great first went to the Temple of Solomon in Israel, and the high priests of the Temple of Solomon there read him the prophecies of the book of Daniel concerning him. So he was obviously jubilant at the fact that he was in God's prophecies. Right after he visited the high temple, the Temple of Solomon in Israel, in Jerusalem, he went to Egypt. And he went and found the high priests in Egypt. And of course, they spoke Greek to him. And he asked them if he was the son of a god, if he was a god, and if he was the son of a god. And of course, they knew that Nectanebo had gone there and had conceived Alexander the Great with his mother Olympias. And they did confirm to him, yes, you are the son of a god. Because, of course, in Egypt, the pharaoh is God. And then they put a ram's horns on him. That's why we sometimes see statues of Alexander the Great with ram's horns. That's what they gave him in Egypt as a depiction of the fact that he was considered to be the pharaoh of Egypt as well. Here we see a coin of Alexander the Great. On the left, he's wearing the horns, and on the right, he's sitting on a throne, and to the right of that says Alexandros. This is an ancient Greek coin of silver. Alexander the Great did not only have the task of conquering Persia. As he went along, he had a historian and an artist. He had various historian, artists, map makers along with him, and they were taking down notes, and they were jotting down, keeping tabs of whatever was going on, battle-wise, and also the peoples and the weird things that they would see. They also saw lots of Nephilim and Anunnaki-looking types, and they either slaughtered them, the ones they couldn't slaughter, they backed into holes in the earth or in the caves, and they would block them up with various types of metals and stones, blocking them and sealing them under pyramids and the like. So you see a lot of that in the East, all throughout the Middle East that he conquered, all the way up to China, and he went to India. That's where he got very badly injured. He was after the Nephilim. He called them the dirty species, the abominable species. And I will give you an upcoming video concerning a saint of the early Christian church who found old writings of people that were in Alexander the Great's cabinet, and he translated them into Byzantine Greek, early Christian Greek, and he described some of these entities, what they were like. Some of them had dog heads. Other people had other of these abominable races had heads in the middle of their bodies. Others were headless. It was just bizarre-looking things, and they were very dangerous. And they were also cannibals. They would eat humans. That was their source of food, was to eat humans. So humans were the endangered species at the time of Alexander the Great, as he was proceeding eastward. So, but why I'm talking about Nectanebo? Nectanebo destroyed all the various old temples in Egypt except for the Abydos temple of Seti, that had the images of these helicopters and UFOs and submarines and airplanes and the like. And the reason he did not destroy that is because he claimed that that was where the forefathers of the pharaohs had landed, and that was a record of what the forefathers came in. So that's why he did not destroy the temple of Seti in Abydos, where we have this steel, this horizontal bar with those hieroglyphs of the spacecraft, the ancient spacecraft in the temple. That's why I'm going into that. But now, going into the bizarre fact that aliens turned out to influence ancient Egypt and even rule ancient Egypt, or even have descendants ruling, their descendants ruling ancient Egypt. Due to the annual floods, we said the high alluvial soil, the valley of the Nile, was the cradle of one of the oldest civilizations of the world, and the two Egyptian kingdoms, the Upper Kingdom and the Lower Kingdom, were rivals, being united by Menes Nar about 5,000 years ago, at 3050 BC. And Egypt was a gift to the Nile. Now we talked about Abydos and Nectanebo. Abydos town was one of the most sacred places in ancient Egypt, as we said, located about 500 miles south of Cairo, kilometers south of Cairo, 15 kilometers from the Nile, and they say that Osiris was buried there. Osiris was to be the god of later life, the world beyond, and the dead. Osiris was the legendary king of Egypt, famous for the vigor and justice with which he governed the country. And as we said, 1948 archaeologists found the Abydos hieroglyph, and everybody's got it through the internet. You can see the helicopter and submarines and airplanes and UFOs on that piece of stone. The mystery now of the Tulli Papyrus. This papyrus, discovered in Egypt, tells a fantastic story that changes our perspective on the past, present, and even future, because they translated what the hieroglyphs mean. The ancient document was discovered in 1934 in an antique store by Alberto Tulli. That's how it got its name, the Tulli Papyrus, from Alberto Tulli, who discovered it. He was the former director of the Vatican's Egyptian Museum. It is unlikely that at that time people would have been familiar with alien stories, even more likely to invent such a story. At first glance, the story seems to be detached from a film scenario, film plot, but things are as real as the Tulli Papyrus seems to be studied and researched by many archaeologists who have confirmed that this papyrus is definitely authentic. On the other hand, there is a group of specialists who think that everything is fake and nothing more. The Tulli Papyrus speaks of a series of visions of the mysterious objects observed by Pharaoh Thutmose. Thutmose lived between 1504 and 1495 BC. So that's about 3,500 years ago. We can get more insights watching the video that's in the source here in the link. But also going back to the Tulli Papyrus, they influenced ancient Egypt, as we said. The most mysterious civilization in history. Ancient Egypt. These ancient Egyptians have left their marks in the passage of time for all of us, who are both knowledgeable but also confusing and extraordinary. These things in ancient Egypt, they managed to build advanced megalithic infrastructure using technology beyond their time and even our time. We still do not know what the pyramids of Egypt were built for, and recent studies say that they emanate energy. Every stone emanates energy, and it emanates even more going to the apex. So what was this thing? Was it an energy generator? Who knows? They still don't know what the pyramids are for. Some even comparable to today's techniques and innovations, the ancient Egyptians are much more advanced. While there are many questions unanswered by Egyptologists, some resort to naming aliens and extraterrestrials as the reasons for these mysteries. Perhaps these mysteries came from aliens, they say. There are cases where aliens supposedly show their influence in ancient Egypt, as we see the pyramids of Giza. One of the first sites to visit in Egypt is, for any tourist, the pyramids of Giza. But we have to know that the three pyramids are perfectly matched with the stars in Orion's belt, with the size of the pyramids being correlated with the brightness of each star. The pyramids are even aligned with the North Magnetic Pole. So how did the ancients do all this? What kind of amazing energy and knowledge do these people have? Not only earthly knowledge, but astronomical knowledge, cosmological knowledge. While this marvel may be possible, the marvel may be possible with modern technology and supercomputers, what exactly did the ancient Egyptians use to calculate the position and brightness of the stars, as well as the placements of the pyramid? Why would they want to have such a huge correlation between Earth and the stars, Orion's belt specifically in this situation? Why is it so important to have the pyramids aligned with Orion's belt and the brightness with their size? So the more you dwell into Egyptology, the more questions arise to be answered, have to be answered. If you're thinking elephants or a huge labor force, then maybe, but that's thought that it was not the only factor. Some say the direction and guidance required to build structures, such structures could have only come from aliens. Then they discovered a very unusual tiny little mummy. An alien mummy was discovered by Dr. Victor Lebec from University of Pennsylvania. He's now a retired professor. In a small pyramid near Senusrel's the second pyramid, the mummy does not appear to resemble a human body whatsoever, with a face that is essentially different. It was found surrounded by unidentifiable objects that baffled Egyptian authorities. While this discovery could be the link to proving the influence of aliens on ancient Egypt, governments have consistently been refusing to validate this claim. Fortunately for those who believe, there are also other discoveries throughout history which point towards alien influences. We have them all over the world. Now, during the 18th dynasty, Egyptian pharaoh named Akhenaten was said to be one of the biggest religious innovators in history because he converted Egypt to a monotheistic god, from a polytheistic society to a monotheistic one. He believed that there was only one God, and he was the God above all. This new god the pharaoh worshipped was called the sun disk, or Aten. This pharaoh had even built an entire city for this god as a sign of his devotion. But the poetry at the time portrayed this pharaoh to be visited by visitors from the sky, while others speculating the pharaoh himself was one of these beings himself. Another reason many believe the influence of aliens on ancient Egypt is to be true because Akhenaten would not have been able to convert an entire civilization's religion without the help or guidance from someone or something with more wisdom or power than the regular people of this earth. Now, then you have the Tulli Papyrus, as we said, these papyrus scripts from the era of Thutmose III, which was 5,000 years ago, discovered by the former director of the Egyptian section of the Vatican Museum, Alberto Tulli. The Tulli Papyrus, said to be the best proof for the existence of aliens and extraterrestrials because the papyrus contains descriptions of how the writer saw a circle of fire approaching from the sky and objects in the shape of alien discs increasing in number before leaving. The Tulli Papyrus is important evidence towards the existence of influence of aliens on ancient Egypt. This is the paper that tells us that ancient Egypt was regularly visited by aliens from space. We're talking about ancient space aliens. This confirms it. Unfortunately, the papyrus is now lost from the hands of Tulli's brother, who received the item shortly before his own death. Whether his death was a coincidence or a conspiracy is unclear. Many have said that the papyrus is to be very important to those who want to prove alien influence over ancient Egypt. But we do have pictures of them and translations of it. And then you have something very odd, ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs on spaceships. That's another reason for considering the influence of aliens of ancient Egypt can be seen from the Egyptian hieroglyphs that were allegedly found on UFOs. These UFOs also include the American Roswell UFO, which is said to have crashed in 1947 July 4th to be exact, and it was reported July 8th, as well as the UFO from the Rendlesham Forest in the UK in 1980. How is it that these two UFOs, which crashed 33 years apart, have the same ancient symbols? particularly the symbol of a triangle with two spheres, which was found to be witnessed on both UFOs. This point raises questions on the origin of the technology, as well as the language and writings of the ancient Egyptians. Then you have the ancient artifacts, hieroglyphs, from the home of one of the best Egyptologists ever, Sir William Petrie. Officials found hidden a number of ancient artifacts from Jerusalem, Israel. These artifacts were taken from his home by Rockefeller Museum in Jerusalem, where they are kept in secret. These ancient artifacts are rumored to be of unearthly origin, with the items including 2 mummified bodies of extraterrestrials. There's also items which depict unexplainable symbols of UFOs and aliens. They look like greys with triangular small heads and bulging huge eyes. Another point that fueled the conspiracy regarding the alien influence on ancient Egypt is Petrie's reason for hiding the artifacts in the first place. Rumors speculate these artifacts were supposed to be secreted from the public to hide the existence of aliens and extraterrestrials. So it can be said that there's a lot of speculation, rumors, conspiracy theories regarding whether or not aliens influenced ancient Egypt and its leaders. It has not yet been scientific evidence to publicly validate the claims, but there isn't sufficient scientific proof. These 10 signs may be indications of truth. Unfortunately for most, we can only guess and gossip about the topic without being able to get too close to the truth. But the Tulli Papyrus really is like the nail in the coffin. I'll leave links below for you for this on Mysterious Facts and Disclosed TV. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.